The Stanford prison experiment, what it revealed about all of us. On day 1, they were just college students. By day 6, some had become monsters. Today, we're taking a deeply unsettling journey into an explainer that honestly feels more like a psychological thriller, but the terrifying part is, it's completely real. This was a scientific study run in the summer of 1971, and it was originally designed to test exactly what happens when you put good, completely ordinary people in a dark, evil place. It's a story about power, about identity, and about how terrifyingly fast the thin veneer of civilization can just peel away.
By the 6th day of this experiment, the reality inside this simulation had become absolutely chilling. Just imagine the sheer claustrophobia of it all. Guards were openly humiliating the prisoners, breaking them down psychologically, and putting them through these sadistic games. Down in those basement corridors, prisoners were having severe mental breakdowns, while the guards just stood by, totally detached, and even laughing at them. Now, this entire atmosphere was completely manufactured, yet the psychological suffering in that room was incredibly, viscerally real. So, the big question is, how on earth did ordinary, perfectly healthy young men get to this terrifying point in less than a single week?
Act 1. Designing a psychological prison.
Okay, let's dive into this setup. To actually understand this collapse, we really have to look at how this whole thing was built. Back in August 1971, a psychology professor named Philip Zimbardo decided to completely transform the basement of Stanford University's Jordan Hall into a mock prison. Out of 75 applicants who responded to a local paper ad, they selected 24 of the most mentally and physically stable college students. They were paid $15 a day. And then, a simple terrifying coin flip decided their fate. Literally, a coin flip decided who wielded absolute authority and who endured total humiliation. Those randomly assigned to be guards were handed khaki uniforms, wooden batons, and silver-reflecting sunglasses. Fun fact, Zimbardo actually borrowed the sunglasses idea from the movie Cool Hand Luke just to prevent eye contact and strip away any sense of shared humanity. The prisoners, on the other hand, were forced into these loose, rough muslin smocks with absolutely no underclothes. They were given nylon stocking caps to simulate shaved heads and locked into heavy ankle chains. This wasn't just some casual costume change, guys. It was a carefully engineered mechanism designed to systematically strip these young men of their individual identities.
Act 2. Day-by-day deterioration.
So, what was originally supposed to be just a mundane, 2-week observation rapidly devolved into a true crime nightmare. The sheer speed of the collapse is really what makes this so frightening. I mean, the timeline here is terrifyingly short. We go from surprise, very public arrests on day 1 straight into a violent prisoner rebellion by day 2, which leads to a complete psychological meltdown and an early termination of the entire project by day 6. The illusion of a harmless college simulation just vanished almost immediately, and it morphed right into a living, breathing prison.
To trigger this rapid descent, the researchers didn't just rely on acting. No, they went big. They enlisted the actual Palo Alto Police Department. On day 1, the unsuspecting students assigned to be prisoners were unexpectedly arrested at their actual homes, right out in the open, in full view of all their neighbors. Real police officers charged them with suspicion of burglary, read them their Miranda rights, handcuffed them, and drove them to a real police station to be fingerprinted. From there, they were blindfolded and literally thrown into the Stanford basement jail.
And the breaking point came fast. By the morning of day 2, a full-on rebellion broke out. The prisoners ripped off their numbered smocks and barricaded their doors. But the guards retaliated with unscripted, shocking brutality. They blasted the completely helpless prisoners with skin-chilling carbon dioxide from fire extinguishers. They stripped them naked, taunted them mercilessly, deprived them of sleep, and, get this, forced them to clean toilet bowls with their bare hands. The sudden rush of absolute power had completely intoxicated the guards, and that basement descended into total chaos.
And then, the psychological trap finally slammed shut. One of the participants, prisoner 8612, a student named Douglas Corpy, began to suffer an acute mental breakdown. He was screaming, crying uncontrollably, flying into this blind rage. When he was brought to the guards and offered a chance to be an informant instead of leaving, he went back to the other inmates, totally defeated, and yelled, "You can't leave, you can't quit." That single, harrowing moment sent an absolute chill through everyone in the basement. Suddenly, they weren't volunteers in a study anymore. They were genuinely trapped.
The heroic Day 6 intervention.
Now, this terror couldn't just go on forever. The climax of this whole dark narrative hinges on the arrival of an outsider. That outsider was Christina Maslach. She was a recent PhD graduate and, actually, Zimbardo's girlfriend at the time. When she came down to the basement on the evening of day 5, she witnessed the guards marching the prisoners to the toilet with bags over their heads, their legs literally chained together. Now keep in mind, over 50 other outsiders, we're talking researchers, parents, even a priest, had toured the prison, seen this abuse, and said absolutely nothing. The bystander effect was in full force here. But Maslach was heroic. She openly challenged Zimbardo, crying and screaming, "It's terrible what you are doing to these boys." Confronted with this undeniable reality, the spell was finally broken. Zimbardo felt ashamed, and the very next day he halted the entire study.
Act 3. Exposing the scientific lie.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is a concept called demand characteristics. You see, for decades, the Stanford prison experiment was the ultimate cautionary tale, supposed proof that normal people inevitably turn evil when given unchecked power. But recent historical digging reveals a pretty shocking modern plot twist. The underlying science itself may have been a manipulated lie. Demand characteristics are essentially cues in an experiment that give away what the researcher wants to see. And it turns out the guards didn't organically invent their cruelty out of nowhere. Cues in the experiment practically handed them a script. The guards were essentially acting out the specific, cruel roles the researchers demanded of them to ensure the experiment was a dramatic success.
The unraveling of this iconic narrative was spearheaded by modern investigations, notably by science historian Thibault Letexier and writer Ben Blum. They dug deep into the Stanford archives and exposed massive, undeniable flaws hidden right within the study's design. What they found in the archives was damning. Secret audio recordings of Zimbardo and his warden explicitly coaching the guards during orientation. The researchers actively told the guards to create fear, to foster a sense of arbitrariness, and to make the prisoners feel completely powerless. So the cruelty wasn't natural at all. It was directed, almost like a stage play.
And these newly uncovered pieces of evidence? They completely reframe everything we thought we knew about this descent into madness. Remember prisoner 8612's terrifying breakdown? That pivotal moment that convinced everyone they were trapped? Well, years later, he actually admitted he faked the entire thing because he simply wanted to get out early to study for his graduate exams. Furthermore, Zimbardo had a massive conflict of interest. He was acting as both the objective lead investigator and the ultimate authority figure, the prison superintendent, actively driving the abusive narrative forward himself. Finally, when researchers later conducted the BBC prison study to try and replicate the setup, but crucially, without the coercive leadership and secret coaching, they found no natural descent into abuse. None. Instead, the prisoners actually united to peacefully challenge the system.
So what's the real takeaway here? The unsettling truth isn't that humans are inherently monsters, just waiting for a uniform to unleash our inner sadists. The Stanford prison experiment was an engineered illusion. It absolutely serves as a terrifying cautionary tale, yes, but it's really more about the authority of science, the immense danger of unchecked leadership, and how a deeply systemic influence can shape our behavior when we believe we are serving a higher institutional purpose.
The ultimate question.
We've looked at the visceral horror of the experiment, and we've uncovered the deliberate manipulation behind it all. But I want you to think about the human element standing right in the middle of this mess. Dozens of people, fellow researchers, priests, parents, police officers, walked through that dark basement, saw the abuse, heard the screaming, and did absolutely nothing, just assuming someone else was in charge. It took one person, Christina Maslach, to shatter the illusion and break the spell. Knowing what you know now about authority, the magnetic pull of conformity, and the intense pressure to just go along with a corrupt system, comment, would you have stopped it?